welcome back to the second episode of the Do You podcast. We got the king himself, Noah Sanders. So great guest for the second one. And we'll just open it up with the question. So, do you think that brick and mortar retail is dying, like a dying breed? It's obviously
It's what retail?
brick and mortar, so it's like Men's Warehouse, Express, like physical stores, because obviously Amazon has their thing, which is just retail in general.
Yeah.
So I guess a little context for those of you that don't know, both me and Noah worked at Men's Warehouse. Noah also worked at Express, so a couple different experiences there, but that's why I'm opening up with this question. But yeah, so just let me know what you think.
Yeah, so I personally don't think that brick and mortar retail is dying at all. If anything, it obviously took a hit recently, just due to like COVID for obvious reasons, with everyone being held back inside or at least being promoted to. But I think just one of the most key aspects that really just keeps them in like business and everything is just the aspect of being able to actually try stuff on, because even though we have universal sizes, or at least in like the US we just go by like extra small up to like even like triple XL or anything like that. It depends on like where you get your clothing actually produced, and like clothes from like Express, even though they could be labeled as like medium, they could differ from something like Uniqlo or something.
Okay.
So even though we have our general sizes, they could still ultimately be different. Plus, also a lot of people genuinely love to just try on clothes before they buy them, because like depending on your economic status, you need to like, so you may need to make sure that you're actually like confident in the purchase before you actually follow through with it. Um, uh, but then also just in general, like going through malls and stuff, like it's just such a common pastime, at least like in California, where you just want to just walk through, and like even if your intention isn't even to just buy stuff, like even if you're just looking at things with friends, you may just come across something that you like and then you buy it. But just like in order to have that very common pastime of just walking through like a big open area with your friends, like you need stores to walk through.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I definitely think that they even though they took a hit, I don't think that they're dying. I don't think they're gonna die, because the only way that it could really die, in my opinion, is if there's like some kind of like virtual like image that you can make of yourself stuff, basically, and then they apply the clothes onto you somehow. But even
something like Ready Player One almost, where you can like put yourself in your avatar or something, and then like just see the clothes on you and see the fit and everything.
Yeah, but then even then you need like exact dimensions of even just your own person, and then each a company needs to make the exact dimensions of each article of clothing to put onto the model. So
yeah, that's a good point, because that's one thing that I think obviously you have places like Macy, Nordstrom, Men's Warehouse, all these places kind of like with COVID obviously took a massive hit. A lot of like, I think Men's Warehouse closed like half of its actual locations or something like that.
They even like were filing for like bankruptcy.
Yeah, they filed for bankruptcy.
Both getting like mail about that.
Yeah,
like, constant letters asking for stockholders, but I don't think either of us were. So.
No, yeah, just because we're former employees, I think. But it's an interesting idea, because obviously malls themselves and like retail and all that, such a big part of like the 80s, the 90s, and kind of that area. It's like even we both had a teacher for English, Pape, who he was going on and on about how like malls were the culture like of America in like the 80s when he was growing up. And so that's why it's kind of interesting when you see now like Amazon and there's obviously other, I think Stitch Fix and like other kind of companies like that are just like, oh, we'll send you stuff, and if you don't like it, you return it. And not like an antidote is like I was trying to order shoes, and I'm like, oh, say I'll try to do it from Amazon, because then it's gonna be here in a couple days, like it'll be fine. And literally I ordered 3 pairs of shoes, and they were all wrong, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm just not gonna order them now. I'm just gonna return them. But that is one thing, is like I almost see it as, for retail now, I almost see it as a not necessarily a clothing company, but a customer service company, where it's like you actually come on in, there's someone there that's going to help you, they make the process easy for you, versus if you just do it online, it's like, yeah, it's simple, you click a button, you get it delivered, but then the hassle of thinking about like, oh, I might have to take it back, and exactly like you were saying, like your economic status as well, where it's like maybe you can't afford to just spend $70 if you might have to take it back 3 days later. Like that's why it's, I don't know, it's an interesting concept though, especially with how prevalent like malls and kind of which were based around these shopping things, like you were saying, like window shopping and everything, how prevalent they were even like a couple decades ago
Yeah.
versus now.
Plus, like another thing too is like another thing that like in-person stores really add is the fact that if you're looking for a specific item but you don't really know like what the item is called, or like you all you can know is how to describe it, that's what like the sales associates are there for. Like they can help
True,
direct you to that item, they can help give you details among the item, as well as also like they can tell you like where it is, rather than if you're just like showing up to like a brand new store like on a website, you'll be like greeted with all these different terms that you may not know, or like some that you may know but it's just not what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
So
even just the different type of fabrics is obviously like,
oh yeah,
who knows what like polyester versus cotton versus linen versus wool versus like microfix, and
or
like
even
all
when
this.
it goes to like cotton blend or just
exactly. It's like
all these percentages is like,
who has the time to really like study that and know that, unless you're like that's your job and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but even then it's like it even then goes to the like manufacturers on like where they get their cotton specifically.
Exactly.
So, like, you can get like 100% cotton from one store, but then you get it at another store and it just feels completely different.
Yeah.
So
you're like, wait, this is cotton? Like I've had that happen quite a few times. Like, no, you're lying to me. But yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about like the different manufacturers being kind of like giving different products and qualities and all that. But yeah,
it's just this kind of like safety term that we try to like tell ourselves like, okay, this is becoming convenient, because that's like that's the one thing that online's really like trying to sell is convenience and everything. That's why Amazon is so big, is like you can really buy anything from Amazon at this point. Like even just like from my own anecdote, I was building a new PC recently and I bought this cooler, which one website that checks for compatibility, like it said it was going to be fine, but it ended up not fitting. So I had to send it back, and because it was through Amazon, it was literally the easiest process ever. Like I didn't even need to box it up. I just came back with the return label on my phone. They scanned it and they're like, all right, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, which is I think I agree with you. I think that's the massive selling point to Amazon now, is that because they're so widespread. I think COVID obviously like probably helped them grow as a retail or as an industry, like because from what it sounded like, they were almost, instead of having like massive, like they still have their massive hubs where they like send cars out of, but it sounded like what they did is took a lot of bought up a lot of like smaller areas and turned those into hubs like nearer to cities. That's how they're able to do like 1 day shipping or 2 day shipping, like these type of things to make it easy. But yeah, and I think obviously it'll get into the question of like, are we almost like subjugating ourselves as humans? Because the thing with it is like you saw an even wider wealth gap after COVID between like the richest among us who own these companies like Amazon, like Bezos, Elon Musk, all these guys, and kind of middle class and lower class people started, like that wealth gap even got even further through just this 1 year alone. And it's kind of interesting to see is the convenience worth it almost, like because obviously things are easier for us as just normal people, but the kind of, I guess, the long-term opportunity, obviously no one knows if it will be there or won't be there, but is it worth that risk, you know? But
yeah, it's very true. And like to kind of add on top of like what you said, when the like the rich, so to say, like when they ended up getting like a bigger divide between them and then like the next class down, that's because they like basically knew how to adapt into the circumstances to keep thriving. Like even though their companies may have taken a hit, they have other sources of income that they use to be able to keep going and everything, because they just built up that financial knowledge and that like flexibility on where their income comes from. Whereas like everyone in the lower and middle class, like they probably didn't know what to do and they just kind of took the hits and just hoped for the best at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's because also obviously too, and because they're like invested in everything and like. But you probably, as we were talking about, like maybe your sole source of income is just from your work, like so when that shuts down, job. You're kind of done. Yeah, it'll be interesting what happens. I think. I mean, obviously, you know, stocks aren't like maybe a great indicator of everyone's well-being, but like work in general is starting to bounce back and everything like that. So. I think we're on a positive track for a long run, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but even then, it's like hard to say if stocks are even an accurate measure of how a company is doing, because if you take into account like what happened with like the whole Wall Street bets thing scandal and all that, like that was basically going off of like a flaw in the system where it's like the price of a stock doesn't really resemble how well the company itself is doing, but how well that stock itself sells, because like people basically, according to my knowledge, people got hold of like that really like rich people were buying these like GameStop and AMC because those companies weren't doing well because they were basically doing it for the long-term investment. So when things started like going back up, those stocks would start going back up, and then they would just make a bunch of profit. And what happened was people started putting on the subreddit Wall Street Bets, like, hey, like we need to like take advantage of this and basically like screw over the rich for like what they're trying to do. And so they started basically buying all of these stocks, and they brought the price up so much, and that didn't change how GameStop and AMC were doing. Like they were still on the shit. AMC wasn't even operating.
Yeah, both of them almost went bankrupt. So it's like like they all of a sudden I guess got a new influx of money with the investment of like actually buying the stock, but you kind of have because also the thing with that, it's quite interesting because then you have these massive hedge funds that are essentially shorting the stocks and be like, it's gonna fail, like the company's gonna fail, and so all of a sudden you got these guys, and it's interesting when you like I was watching, I think it was Bloomberg or something like that, and they were talking about how it's like they were classifying both of the stocks as meme stocks. And like I've never heard of that term out of like all, and now it's actually a thing where it's just like we're gonna hyperinflate the value of this company even though it's not valued like that. And then I mean it's worked out for them because they were able to survive, so it's good for them. But we'll see. We'll see with them.
Stocks are really expanding too, because like especially with Dogecoin recently, I feel like that's the newest thing.
Yeah.
And like there was like this whole incident with SNL when Elon Musk went on, and everyone expected him to talk about Dogecoin, so a bunch of people bought ahead of time. Then he never did, so everyone got pissed at him.
And then they crashed.
Yeah, and so like Dogecoin just crashed, and they got pissed at Elon Musk, and like you can't really get mad at him because he is just like an individual. Like he's like an influencer in the sense, but like he's not like paid to do this.
Exactly.
Or like it's not like it's his job to talk about Dogecoin. Like it's just people trying to guess, and then they got pissed because it didn't work out for them in the end. But ultimately Dogecoin, like it's literally named after a meme. So
yeah, exactly. It's like that's what it's kind of interesting. I mean, when I do invest in stuff, I like want it to be like a physical, like, or not a physical thing, but I can see the value in the company. So that's why stuff like GameStop and AMC and that type of stuff was like kind of wary of. Obviously they're still like their stocks are pretty high now, and like they're still doing decent, but it's like with Dogecoin, like crypto, I can't really wrap my head around it that much of like, because I think it was the beginning of 2019, I did like quite a bit of research on like Bitcoin and like the blockchain technology and like all of that, and I just could not wrap my head around the value of the coin. And so I didn't end up buying it, but it's like, which now, you know, but it's still like, exactly. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't understand the value of this crypto, and like, I don't know if you do. I don't know if you have any experience with crypto at all, or like that type of stuff. But
a small amount of research on Ethereum, because once NFTs started getting popular, like I wanted to try and look into, like try and understand that, and like I got a small understanding of it, but there was just still some like holes I couldn't quite fill, like in like my total understanding of it. But like cryptocurrency is just
it's wild, and we'll see, because I think, who was it? I think it was the El Salvadorian president, I think, which is a Northern Triangle country in South America. I believe it was them at least, made it so that you can like pay your taxes with crypto now, like with Bitcoin, and like it can be used as a national form of currency. And so, but obviously, let's say you pay your taxes in crypto and then it shoots up or shoots down like 100%, and then what the economy of the country just kind of collapsed or skyrocketed. So but that's one of the things a lot of people, I guess, were criticizing him for, like doing that so soon, because obviously it's not a stable form of currency yet, like because as we saw, it was at like 69,000, and then it crashed down to 35 or something like that after China was like, we're not using this.
Yeah, exactly. So, like that's the issue that I feel like with cryptocurrency, is that there is no like standard for it. Like it's always fluctuating. Like I remember reading the story about, there was like this group of employees, I think it was at like a smaller company, and they agreed to be paid in Bitcoin and stuff, and this was before like it all boomed and stuff. And so what ended up happening was once Bitcoin started to expand, the CEO or like the boss or whatever, they started like asking like, hey, can we get some of the money back, because this is like kind of blowing up. So it's like, it's really hard, because like you have to find that balance of like, is it appropriate to pay like with cryptocurrency when it fluctuates like this, because like what happens if it either goes up or down in the future. So like I mean, especially with,
I'm sure companies wouldn't mind if it went down, but like you just said, like it skyrocketed. So they were like, okay, hold on,
Like
we can't keep
maybe
paying
you owe
this.
us.
Yeah, it's like you're getting $60,000 every like week or something, or not week, but month or something like that. But yeah, that it's it'll be interesting, especially now. You have a lot of people. I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but it connects where it's like you have a lot of people going for more like almost traditional forms, and I feel like it's our generation started kind of with millennial generation than ours, and I'm sure generation alpha, which is apparently the one after us, is it will happen with them too. But you get these forms of like a lot more people are into stocks and crypto and like finding different ways to become monetarily successful, versus the traditional like kind of educational pathway that it's like, you know what, I graduate high school and either go work for like a union steel company or something like that, which obviously no steel left in America, but go like that, you can become middle class that way, or you go graduate high school, go through traditional kind of educational journey, get get bachelor's, master's, PhD, whatever, and then become like upper middle class almost, and then you pass that down to your kids, and that cycle continues. But it almost seems like with our generation, and obviously millennials too, kind of starting, you have a lot more people being like, you know what, screw this, like this isn't working. Like I'm gonna do, instead of doing this traditional kind of pathway that my parents did and their parents and all this, we're instead either going to become just like day traders or crypto traders or drop shipping, or
even just like going into like a specialty field and like just going to a school for that specific field, like
yeah,
kind of
like trade schools,
but
yeah,
but like even into other industries, like me myself, I've even dropped out of college just recently, and I'm still doing I'm still going through like a educational area. It's
because I recently saw you got into
So I'm a part of this school that's based in Australia that's called CG Spectrum, and it's a widely like accepted visual arts area, or like visual arts college and stuff. And I'm doing it for 3D modeling, and basically I started June of last year, like literally right when COVID hit, and the lockdown started. And I am now a year and 1 month in, and I am just finishing up my second to last term, and then afterwards I get my certificate, and I'm literally just ready, like I'm job ready, like I even have like a portfolio already and everything like that.
Oh wow! So it's legit. You're like ready to go into the actual marketplace.
It's completely specialized. It's like it's accelerated relative to how college goes, because after this, like this would have taken a year and a half. And then I'm job ready. Whereas if I went through college, I would have had to do like the 4 years of getting like even just a bachelor's degree. That's not even considering like any kind of education afterwards. But then also I would have need to spend time like doing general eds, electives, everything like that.
True. And then obviously like after that, even it's not a guarantee that you'll get a job. Really, it's more like, okay, cool, you got a piece of paper, and then try to find something. Versus this, because it is like you said, specialized. Obviously, there's probably more job prospects because you need a unique certification for a lot of it.
Plus they also have like a person on their like board and stuff who is dedicated to helping the students basically get those jobs, get those internships afterwards and everything. And they have like another term after like the one that I'm gonna complete soon, where I just meet with her for I think it's like 3 months, and she'll like help me set up my portfolio. They even help me set up like contracts and stuff for like individual labor and stuff. So like
it's really dedicated. Like,
exactly. It's like a very well known school and stuff. Like I even found it on LinkedIn and everything. So it's not just like some like BS like, oh yeah, join us, like pay us money, we'll help you. Like no, like they actually genuinely do and everything. And like one of the things that kind of helped me come to this decision was I realized, or like I did some research and I realized that one of the reasons that college got so expensive was that it was once the government started help paying for it. So a lot of people ended up not being able to go to college because of because of like the payment needed for it. So the government decided to chime in and give out like loans and grants and stuff to help like ensure that the American workforce would be able to like get into the workforce and like be qualified. And so once the colleges realized like, wait, if the government is willing to like cover this gap between students and what we want, we can increase our requirement that's meant to be paid, and thus we can make more money off of basically the government, because like the same amount of students will still come in, but we can charge more and the government will just cover the rest. So that's what has led many people to believe that like, or start to question like, is a college degree even worth it? Because like it's just such a high price, and like a lot of the jobs that you can get right out of like just after a bachelor's, like it almost just doesn't even seem worth it, like
Yeah,
in
really.
terms of trying to pay it off in the future. So
Yeah, like I'm personally going through that traditional pathway, uh, based on like the career I want, which is in like a diplomatic field, and so you kind of are required to get a master's in like international relations or some form of that. So that's mainly why I'm actually going through it. But it was kind of wild. So I obviously went to West Valley for 2 years. I got refunded the money, so it's like I essentially paid nothing to the tuition education costs. Um, but it's insane to see because when I was applying for these transfer schools, I'm like, this is gonna cost me, what was it, like, without scholarships and stuff, is like, or like grants and all of that, it's gonna cost me like something like 60 to 70 thousand to go to UC for 2 years. I'm like, how does anyone pay 120 to $140,000 to go for 4 years? And like for 2 of the years, you're not really doing that much. You're socializing,
exactly.
which is good, but it's like you're not really doing like, and sure, there's certain like specialized GEs, but it's not really like anything useful for the long run.
Yeah, like you're
And
paying
then
whole salary
exactly,
just for a year.
yeah. And then after that, you might have to do 2 more years because realistically now, if you're going that traditional pathway, a bachelor's isn't really where to stop in a way. If like
Like it's almost like a minimum.
yeah, where it's like it used to be the high. Actually, like I was just talking about, it used to be the high school degree, and then you can go and be like a steel worker or something like that. It's almost like now it's a bachelor's degree, and then you can go and like maybe barely get like a middle class type life. Versus now it's like you need your master's, and maybe even then, it's kind of crazy. But that's why it's interesting with what you're doing because I think you were a psych major.
I was a psych
Before,
major.
yeah.
And I like you, I went to West Valley for 2 years, and I finished up until my transfer degree. So I do have that as like a backup in case this doesn't pan out. But like obviously now I'm gonna be fully invested into like the 3D modeling and everything. So,
Yeah.
like I even have internships I'm gonna be applying for. I'm looking like I'm keeping up with the job market to ensure that there's still opening, there's still demands and stuff.
Yeah.
But the career lady, like she's been giving me a bunch of information on like where to look, and like there's even this whole spreadsheet that this one person created that's literally just constantly being updated, not just through websites but through like LinkedIn offers.
Oh,
And
wow.
then like
Okay.
also even people just independently reaching out to the main organizer of it, and then they just keep adding it, and literally there's like over like hundreds and hundreds of just applications just in California alone. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
thought you were talking
demand's
about
up
like
there.
globally and stuff.
No.
That's crazy. Wow. Well, I guess especially here you got more of a. Actually, this is what kind of because obviously with 3D modeling, I would imagine it would be something like I could be wrong on this because I don't know too much about the field, obviously, but maybe something like Disney animation or something like that around that field. What kind of I guess prospects, for lack of a better word, would like are you looking at? I guess not necessarily specific companies, but just jobs in general.
So for something like Disney animation, that's more in like the film industry. I'm personally going to
Okay.
be going into the gaming industry. I'm going to try and create like assets for video games. My main goal is to like create environments for like the people to actually roam through.
Oh, nice.
Just because like even before I got into 3D modeling, like I've always loved looking at like artworks of like just general scenery. I was a big like fan of the whole cyberpunk era that happened in art where just everyone was uploading that and stuff. But like yeah, so my goal is to get into environment modeling for video game assets, but realistically, you can either go into video games to where you can create like environments, you can create props, you can create characters, you can create like animals or even just like fictional creatures or anything like that. Or you can go into the film industry where you'll either mainly be working on like animation shorts. Like I know League of Legends has been going crazy with all of their animation, so you can go into something like that. You can go into like even like real life like modeling and stuff like such as Pacific Rim or something, because you still have to create those robots. They're not making them in person. They're not destroying
that'd be
whole
wild.
buildings for the film. No.
Universal just straight up like making. Oh man.
Just like, oh, forgot to hit record. Let's do it again. Build the city. Rebuild the city. But like people still have to create these things, and that's just for film and video games alone. Right now, there's also a very like the thing that's kind of like slowly getting bigger and bigger is actually 3D printing, and that's literally the exact same thing. Like it's the same process and all. It's just a different output in the end. Like for right now, because I'm just an independent student, I create the model, and then I texture it, and then I just kind of just take screenshots almost like it's implemented into the main program I use, where you can set up like a basic little scene, and then I just take screenshots and I upload it to my portfolio. But if I wanted to 3D print it, I'm literally like, after the texturing process, I'm done at that moment. I might not even need to texture it if I want to like paint it in person or something, or depending on the material you print with. So like that's another area that's becoming pretty big. But then also another thing that really has so much potential, but I just feel like we're not really expanding on it enough, is VR. We all know VR. We all know about the Oculus. We all know about like the Vive and everything. Like, it's gonna be like, I feel like it has so much potential to be such a big thing, especially when you like could potentially turn into things like holograms or something, like for example, like just putting like a hologram up on like a stage or something. So I just feel like there's gonna be potential for these things to happen. Like, there will be like a big team that has to come with it, because like once you get into like the hyper realism where you want it to like actually feel like you can actually touch it in reality, there's gonna be multiple people behind that team to ensure that's to the highest quality, like the highest degree and such. So
Yeah.
and those are just like two of the other areas. But then even then, like, to refer back to like from an artist standpoint in the 3D modeling industry, there's so many things that you can even sell independently on your own. Like, there's different like brushes for like things like Photoshop. There's different brushes for like ZBrush. You can even sell individual models. I know that's a very common thing, because that comes into something that's called kit bashing, where like basically if you sell like the model of like a car, you don't need to keep that car all together. You can take it apart, and you can take things such as like the rubber tires, and you can like change it up a bit, or you can leave it as is and you can put on something like a tank. Like, you don't need to create every independent model. Like, you can just take individual parts, and then you can find another like use for them. So
it's almost like recycling your prior material and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and one of the biggest like issues that I see with the whole art industry is just the time function to it. Is that a lot of art studios, they're really rushed in their process to like really like output the final product as fast as possible. When either it's a movie or a video game, and like if you have to like delay a video game or anything really for like a couple of months, because you're not going to delay it just like, oh, it'll be out next week instead. So, like, no, it's literally delayed for months. Like, it's not going to receive the best like feedback from the customers and everything. So they always try to rush like all of these assets to be finished as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So that's the one very common issue when it comes to the art industry, and like
that's also what they were talking about, I guess, with video games specifically. You have a lot of companies doing like crunch now is something I heard that was kind of a big thing in just the video game development industry with the coders and everything. Was just people like essentially working tireless hours to like actually put an output, because they want to rush it, because they don't want to, because if you think about it really, if you're like, okay, this is going to be out in August, actually November, and then people would be like, you know what, I'm just going to not really purchase it or something like that. Like, some people might just get frustrated and not do it if you keep pushing it back. Unless you have a really dedicated like base of supporters. But that's really interesting though, kind of the different methods you can go with, because obviously VR kind of like exploded a few years back, and people are like kind of, well, not exploded, I shouldn't say that, but like you have with the Oculus Rift kind of like really, I guess,
that was like the first
brought it to the main, and like oh this can actually be something. And then you kind of got, I know with like Pokemon Go and like all these different apps, you have AR now, it's augmented reality, where it's like you're just essentially not switching, but you're like almost overlaying a fictional reality over your actual one, to like produce stuff that's not really there, like Pokemon. And so that's another industry that is kind of interesting to me, because I feel like that's also how you can get more into holograms too, but obviously it's just not like in your phone, like it has to be like on like an actual pavement or something.
Exactly.
So it's a really interesting concept, because the other thing I'm thinking with this is obviously with the rise of automation now, it's kind of like starting to put a lot more people out of work, like factory workers, even like service industry workers, and like McDonald's or Starbucks or these type of industries. But it almost seems like with what you're talking about specifically with like actually video game design and like 3D modeling and rendering and this type of stuff, and even with VR, you can't really automate the core component of that, of like the actual human working on it, because and even if you do, then you need someone to then
fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you need someone to then be like, okay, do this. So you're not really there's no point in automating that at that point because you still need the person to tell the robot what to do.
Yeah.
At least for now, and I don't see it really changing in the next, at least decade or two.
Yeah, like
But
the closest thing to like automating 3D modeling is this thing called photo scanning. And essentially what that is you take, like, let's say like we have a water bottle right here.
yeah,
If you have this water bottle and you want to photo scan it, you have to take literally like 100 if not 200 photos of different angles of the same water bottle unmoved, and then you have to put it into this software, and maybe you'll get a good model. But even then, you have to do this thing that's called retopology, which basically I assume you don't know, but when you have a 3D model, you have it made up of these things called polygons. I have an image here that I'm going to show. He'll put on the podcast. Or basically, it's all polygons, which is basically squares or rectangles. And what happens is once you get in, or the model itself is made up of these, and it's going to be a very plain state. There's no color added in yet. And that's when you get into the texturing phase, which is basically when you apply all the textures. You can add things like lights glowing, you can add in dirt, like damages and stuff, because that's actually something that not a lot of people realize, is that it's very clear that perfection isn't like possible.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when you look at art and when you come into like video games or like movies or anything, if you want to create a perfect model, the thing that makes a model so perfect, like such as like Godzilla or anything like that, it's actually all of the imperfections added in. It's all of the scratches, it's all of the dirt, it's all of the dents, it's everything to make it seem real. Because if you have that perfect model itself, then you can tell like, oh, that's not like actually real. Like there's no
way
scratches.
this could
like,
live. Yeah, exactly.
Because even if you like, for example, just touch a table, your fingerprint's still on that, and it adds dirt to the table. That's what gives it its texture, rather than just being just flat, perfect, clean wood. Like there's always going to be imperfections everywhere, and so you'll need to be adding in those things. But then also, so basically when it comes back to the water bottle, sorry, I keep going on tangents.
No.
I keep forgetting where I'm going, but you need to basically redo those polygons that are added on top of the water bottle, because essentially you'll get, when you photo scan it, you will receive probably millions of polygons. And the thing that I'm showing Khalil right now, that's probably like just like 30,000 polygons or something for like a whole helmet that's almost going down to the shoulders. I don't know if that's how many polygons there were, but it's just like a random guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
I
mean, obviously you guys will see it, but there's a lot there. That's insane.
Yeah, and like I'll show him another example. I'm gonna ignore the colors here, but there's some objects where in order to get these details, you need, those are all squares right there. Those are all polygons going into those things. There's like a shoe on the current person I'm doing. It looks very black. That's because those are all polygons right here. That's how detailed it gets.
World?
That's how detailed.
That's so microscopical almost, where it's like you're going down to the very like finite, or not finite, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like exact detailing of the object.
Exactly, but like, when you put this into a game, like this is just like one shoe that I'm showing him right now, or like one boot. You're not gonna want to load that many polygons in like a game engine, because your game's gonna slow down so much.
Just for a boot,
Yeah, exactly. So that's why you do the retopology, which is when you just make much bigger polygons to where it's actually like possible to load these things. And then the texturing phase itself, like there's this part to it called baking, which is basically where you take the details from the very high polygon version of the model, and then it will put all of the details onto the low polygon version. Because what happens is you take this low polygon version, and it's a 3D model now, but you need to change it by adding seams, adding like little cuts to where it separates, and then you turn it into a 2D form right here. And then that's basically it's just a flat file. And what happens is when you add the details in the texturing phase, it basically takes this flat square here, because it's one tile, and then it just paints onto it. It paints on all of the details and everything, like I can show you here.
Oh, wow.
Those are all of the details being painted on, and then it's basically being applied to the 3D model.
You said
itself.
Baking? That's what it's called?
Baking is when you take the details from the high polygon version, and then it goes into the low poly. That's things like dents or scratches.
Got you. The things that make it look realistic.
Yeah. So.
Okay. That's insane, actually. So I'm not good with like computers except for recording. So so that's insane for me to see all the like little like details that actually form that. So that's also something I guess you take for take for granted when you're like watching something in a game or something like that. It's like, oh, I'm just walking in this fully like suited up outfit and it's like not minding anything, but realistically that outfit probably took someone like hours to make.
Yeah. Oh
like
no, like
yeah.
just this helmet alone, I think took me like it was over a 5 week process,
Mm.
but or a 6 week process. Sorry, but if I did it like every day, and,
Yeah.
like actually worked like 9 to 5 or some shit like that, would probably like take like a week or something.
Yeah.
But
still a week, a week of time.
just for a helmet.
Yeah, exactly.
So and that's like working every single day.
That's
so,
crazy, man.
Like every asset has a lot of time put into it, and even things as small as like rocks or trees, like there's still so much time being put into those, and like you can't just make one and copy and paste it because you'll notice that it's just the same tree over and over. So you have to make different trees that differ in like all like stages of the process.
So the type of games like I guess Fallout's a good example where Fallout I've only played Fallout 4 and 76, but with Fallout 4 at least you can like somewhat alter your environment at like as you're going. So I don't know if you actually know about this specific thing, but because you're obviously having to make these things and it takes that kind of that time intensive process, is it like they literally have to almost make like, let's say you are cutting down a tree or something, right? And so the tree starts off as like an actual tree, but are they actually having to like put in all the different variations of that tree that could be?
Yeah, they do. So essentially what happens, thankfully it's not as bad of a process as it seems, because you can save whenever during the process of the creation.
True.
And so basically what happens is you have the fully done tree. You'll give it to like your art lead, the person who's overseeing the project. If there's no like comments to like basically fix or anything, then you take that tree, you basically duplicate it, and then you like if you're like cutting down the tree, then you just like add in the different phases of it being cut, because sometimes there'll be like one chop, there'll be like a little bit of an indent, two chops, you'll be like most of the way through, three chops, it falls. So you'll basically just need to make those 3 stages. But once you have the final tree, you can just basically edit that tree. Like you can literally just separate it and then like move it up a bit on one side, or like rotate it up and then just like add some texture.
Okay, so not as bad as I'm thinking, because I'm literally thinking like every single thing has to be rendered in. It's still obviously still a lot of effort put into it, but
you have to create the same, like you have to create the different trees but you don't have to start from scratch every single time.
That's good. I guess that goes back to what we were talking about with like recycling your products almost, where you can like reuse some of them.
Because at the very end of the day, you want to try and finish your projects as fast as possible with still the highest amount of detail you can add. But you also don't want to like overdo it and everything too, where you're like spending like weeks on just one tree. So
exactly.
Like there's this one artist who is extremely popular. He's probably one of the most popular like 3D modelers, or not gonna say 3D modeler, but 3D artists in the world. And his name is Michael. I don't remember his last name, but he goes by the handle Beeple. Beeple. His name is Beeple. And even though it's a really funny name, this dude knows his shit, because he has been creating a 3D like screenshot, like a 3D environment every single day for I think 14 years now. A whole ass environment all brought together every single day for like 14 years. And he says he never makes things in advance. He always does it the day of. So like
that's insane.
That's but he admitted that like, he uses a lot of kit bashing, which like of course like he has to, like it's just impossible otherwise. But like he gave the advice where basically when it comes to when he's like adding any changes to the like objects that he downloads, he gives himself a time limit on certain objects, being like, okay, I'm gonna give myself 20 minutes to like maybe like add some like wrinkles to like this like person's skin or something. And once that time is up, I'm done. Because when you're doing, like a lot of artists will agree, when you're like making something of your own, you can spend hours upon hours just doing the finest little details, where you're basically just wasting time, and then you're ending up with almost essentially the same project. Because like I could work on something like this helmet, for example, and I can just keep changing the scratches, like, oh, like what if like it doesn't hit from that angle, it has to be a little bit more like sideways or something, and I'll just keep changing it. I'll keep pressing undo, do a scratch, undo, do a scratch, and I'll just keep doing that over and over. But there comes a point where you just have to accept, I'm like, all right, you know what, this is barely going to be noticeable, I just have to move on. So it's all about finding that balance between having like a realistic good amount of detail that you're looking for, but also not wasting time either. You just have to be honest with yourself. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So, does Beeple, yeah, that's
People,
yeah.
people, yeah.
Does he do that for like a specific company, or is he just doing that for
I
the
think it's
sake of doing
independent.
it?
I
Oh
think he's
wow,
all independent. He does a
interesting.
lot of like collaborations with other companies.
Yeah,
and shit
I'm
too,
sure.
but he's mainly known for I think his independent work because he actually I think sold one of if not the most expensive NFTs ever,
Oh,
and
okay.
it went for $69 million. Honestly, it's kind of a fitting number.
Yeah,
Considering
yeah.
him, if you see him in an interview, he's fucking hilarious. Like I'm sorry for language, but he's just hilarious. But like yeah, he ended up selling like this like collage almost of like just I think like over 1,000 of his pieces, which like it seems
I
like
think
a
I've
lot,
seen
but
this actually.
yeah,
Now that I think about it.
exactly
Yeah,
and
because
like
I'm picturing something actually.
1,000's a lot, but in reality, that's like a fourth of all the work he's done
Yeah.
over the past 15 years. Or like
for
even, like,
$69 million.
like a fifth, yeah.
Yeah.
For like $69 million.
Yeah.
Granted, like unfortunately for cryptocurrencies, because that's how it was paid. NFTs were always paid in
Oh,
Ethereum specifically. He was taxed a shit ton. Like someone put a quote like when he first saw the number of how much he was taxed on that piece of land, he's like, "Holy fuck, that's a lot of money." And that's his quote. That's his only quote.
Oh my gosh.
But like still.
I didn't even know you could be taxed if it's through crypto.
Yeah,
like,
cryptocurrency
that's
gets
insane.
taxed heavily actually.
Wow. Okay.
It gets taxed more than like the U.S. dollar, I believe, like a lot more. I think it's like kind of outside.
That's so odd.
I remember when I was doing my taxes this year, like
Yeah.
there was like a new section that was dedicated specifically to like have you been involved with like cryptocurrency or like do you own cryptocurrency or anything like that. So I think there's like separate like laws and stuff regarding cryptocurrency because it's not under like a governmental like supervision.
Oh, okay. Got you.
So it's all like
Yeah.
independent. So
Yeah, I guess it's not really sanctioned by like the FEC, or I think is what
yeah,
it's called.
not,
Yeah.
like under like strict regulations. Like there are like laws it has to follow, so it's not like
Yeah.
deemed illegal or like
Yeah.
some kind of criminal thing or like some kind of like
Yeah, but
under
it's
the
not
table
like
type of
as
thing,
heavily regulated as like Wall Street.
yeah, because
is
it's
or
almost
something
kind of like
that.
its own independent business because like kind of what we were talking about, like the prices fluctuate and stuff,
Mhm.
and it's hard to like say that that's really just like okay and stuff. I don't know how like, to really say it, but like yeah, you just yeah.
Okay,
I'm just
yeah.
gonna stop here.
No, yeah,
Just
yeah.
lost my
I
thoughts.
didn't even know that was a thing, but with I mean that's wild, man. Like I'm still looking at this, but that he does all that and that you're like starting obviously that as well. Not obviously rendering like full scenes and everything, but that's an insane. Like I don't think I.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe if I dedicated myself to it, but
this is
realistically,
only
I
a
don't think
year,
I could have
too.
done that.
Like this is
Wow.
just 1 year of progress in a specialized school too. So like I won't lie, like I look back at my first the first models I made, I'm like, damn, those are like pretty bad and simple, but like still I started there.
Yeah,
like everyone
exactly.
needs to start somewhere. And like I'm like really happy that I did and stuff, and like I'm really glad I went this pathway because like it added like a really like dope hobby of mine
Yeah.
that like I love and stuff, and like it's not something that like I completely dread, and like I'll actually look at stuff outside of it like on my own time too. Like it's not like kind of like when I was doing psych where like I dreaded reading like the book every single day, and like
Yeah.
once I read one chapter I was just out and like I just couldn't do any more psych that day. But, like,
Yeah.
this like I will literally spend whole days like literally like sometimes like I think I even one day spent 14 hours just doing 3D modeling, and like that just kind of like it kind of just clicked with me like okay, like if I can just do this for like a whole day, but psych I could only read like a chapter and then
Yeah.
I'm just mentally fried. Like I think I just need to choose this one.
That's why I never read the textbook, Noah. You have to understand. So I don't read my textbooks.
My last semesters I didn't know.
Yeah, I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
But no, I mean that I'm really happy that you found that too, because there's actually it's a Macklemore. It's in a Macklemore song thing where he's talking
Only
about
the
growing
most
up and
reliable
I know, right?
quotes.
But he's saying like find something that you love and do it every day, and don't change for the world, have the world change for you, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing where it's like, yeah, do something that you're actually passionate about, and then you will be successful in your own right. Whatever that success means to you, because obviously people interpret success differently. If it's monetary, I'm like, obviously people can. That's honestly Elon Musk, because everyone kind of thought he was a kook in like 08 or something like that when he really started his stuff, or like 09. But then he kind of, he's like, no, I have a vision for the future. I want to do this, and so I'm going to do it. That's it. And I mean, he's doing well for himself.
Yeah.
He's doing all
Just
right.
an adult child.
Yeah,
Just kind of
exactly.
messing around,
Building
doing, like, Mario
flamethrowers
skits,
and
or Mario
my
skits on
gosh.
SNL.
The boy.
Flamethrowers by day.
The second
SNL by
richest
night.
man. Oh my gosh. But yeah, man. No, This is something, especially. You said you had one more term to do, or this was your last term. You said.
I am finishing up this lady I'm creating, like this little thief lady that I'm making for now, and then I have one more term after this where I will be creating an environment like piece. I don't know what it'll be because I have to choose it myself, but I also kind of have to go by like what they expect me to learn in the course itself.
Like actually prove that, like, hey, I actually learned what I was meant to.
Yeah, I need to send it off to my mentor, and then he'll give me feedback based on if he thinks like it's like realistic and appropriate for my term and stuff. So
was this sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Go
ahead. I was gonna ask, was this like school? Was it something that you just applied for and they're like, you know what, yeah, or was it you registered, or how did you kind of go about actually doing this?
Yes and no. On the website, you give your email, you give your name, and you write a little bit about yourself as well as like what your goals are. You apply to a specific field and stuff because in my case I did 3D modeling, but they also teach other things such as like 2D animation, 3D animation. They're starting a new program for like anime drawing. They do concept art.
Oh, that would be
like
pretty
they do
sick,
a bunch of stuff. But I just applied for modeling myself, and like they could like make it seem like an application process, but realistically, if you're just gonna pay, they're gonna accept you. Yeah. Most likely. So, but like so I don't think it's really the most like rigorous of processes, but like there is like still an application process. You have to wait to be accepted, and then you just continue on. Yeah. And afterwards, the way that the whole program works is that I'm given like it's actually through Canvas, the same thing West Valley and stuff.
Oh, okay, nice.
Where, I am given like one term at a time, and it's 12 weeks, and each week there's like a couple of videos I have to watch where they'll teach like the techniques that are for that week. Like for example, like if I was doing like the texturing phase, they would teach like how to do the different generators for like dirt or something, or like they could like teach how to like make like the basically the imperfections more realistic, because if you like add like if you add like a bullet hole like on the inside of a jacket, like that just doesn't really make much sense because it's very rare that you're gonna be hit on the inside of like a jacket, like you're gonna be hit on like the front. So they'll do things where like they'll like recommend you pull up references, they may provide some of their own, but they basically kind of just give like little tutorials on like either new techniques, or they'll like tell you like very important old ones, or they'll just essentially give you like the most important information you need to be able to move on, and they'll walk you through the whole process and everything. And then also in addition to those online videos, I meet with a mentor who is someone who has been a professional in the field for like usually several years, so like they know their shit, they've been through a lot.
It's not just some like theoretical professor
guy.
It's
not someone who's graduated.
Exactly.
But like I meet with my mentor once a week, and he'll give like any tips on my model specifically, because the videos are them doing their own model, like displaying the techniques and everything. So he'll basically give me any tips. I'll ask him like, I'm thinking of doing like these specific like techniques for like this kind of like product. Like for example, like I was like, if I'm thinking of doing this version called box modeling for like just like the microphone here on the helmet, and then he'll tell me like, okay, like like that's a good idea, or you can do it in this manner instead, and then he'll give me a different technique that may have not been taught in the videos. Okay. So, like he's there to like help guide me along, answer any kind of questions I have, as well as provide like new kind of like input into like how I'm gonna go about things. So
that's pretty cool though, especially with kind of the prospects obviously that you have going forward here. And actually, I mean, obviously you guys will also see it, but seeing kind of the level of detail, because this is obviously something that you made, so the amount of work that's been put into it that maybe you, like I was saying, maybe just would have taken for granted if it was just on the TV somewhere, but that you've actually like seen it and everything now, and understand how it's made and the process, the lengthy process that like goes into it. So yeah, it'll be really cool to do. When you guys can see this, obviously. But yeah.
Plus there's just so many different fields that this could even apply to. Like I'm not even like even forced into just being a part of like a company either. Like I could realistically sell like a bunch of different things on my own to like create my independent shop. Like it could either be 3D printing related. I could sell like brushes. I could sell models, or like I could even take like literally the scenes that I create or the like objects that I create, and I could like print them on like shirts, banners, masks too. Like
Okay.
literally, I can like with art, you can really just put them onto like any object and then
Start your own
try and
clothing
sell
store.
it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there's so many different applications for this type of industry and stuff. So like I'm not like too worried about where I'll end up or like how I'll be trying to like make my way through life, just trying to like make money or anything, or being worried of where I have to go. So because there's just so many different options for me on where I can go.
Yeah,
So.
and it'll be really interesting, especially as this field itself develops, as the industry develops, as we keep kind of moving forward with technological advancements, to see like how much time. Maybe you were saying like obviously it's a 6-week process, but you're like going through stuff. But for the helmet, but who knows? Maybe in the future after you have your more experience in the field and everything, and then with even the technological advancements, it might even just take you a day, and possibly in like 10 years from now when you get updated and everything.
Like programs are constantly being updated with newer and newer features, and like even though they're automated, like their generation like features aren't really the best. Like we can even take those features and then we can just like clean them up a little bit manually, and that would even just then save us a bunch of time. Like for example, when it came to the person I'm creating, for the retop process, because like I showed you what it looks like when there's a bunch of polygons, we have to make it into a smaller count. There's an automated feature that will automatically retop it, and while it doesn't have like the correct topology for like a human, for like when we send it off to the animators and stuff, we just have to like fix up very few things just to make it so it is correct. So like even just by having that little starting point, we're already like saving a bunch of time just with that alone.
Yeah. So it's almost like a combination of the manual, the actual like mind behind the creation, and then the automated process that can help you perfect, or not perfect obviously, but you know what I'm trying to say, like get the object you're trying to get.
The automated process, like while it's still not perfect, like the more it improves, the less and less manual corrections we'll have to create.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I guess, just that's what's interesting about automation as a broader topic, as we talked about before a little bit ago. It's like it has, with all, I guess, technological innovation, you have the possibility for evil, I guess you could call it, or something, like actual harm being done to people, of like, unemployment, or even when you see like nuclear innovation, it's like, well, obviously now that's, I guess Fallout's a good example, actually, where you see the nuclear revelation. They bombed Japan and everything, but then it's like, instead of carrying on, you transform it into a safe energy concept and use that. So it's like you have the use of good and evil, essentially, as a the very baseline topic of it. But that's also with technological development too, where it's like sometimes automation could be seen as like a very harmful negative thing, where presidential candidates have even run on like the dangers of automation. But you also see the actual applications that it can be used for, and the benefits it can be used for. So I think that's what's really interesting, especially about what you're doing, is that it's an actual application of automation that you can use as a individual when you're creating stuff.
Yeah, and like even with like to go back to 3D printing, like there are people that are like using the 3D printers to like create like literal parts to like even machinery. Like like if it doesn't require the most like durable of parts, but like if it's just something to like prevent like contact, like scratches, like for example like computer chips, like they can't be touched too much, or else like it could actually mess with like the hardware itself. So like if you just need something like very basic just to cover it, they could just literally 3D print it, and then
like a little sheath or something.
Yeah, and you'd save so much time rather than like having to pay for like actual metal, and then like for someone to like bend the metal. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know how like
like metalworking and everything.
And everything.
Well, so, that's with 3D printing also. It's really interesting because I remember a few years ago when 3D printing became like accessible for like kind of somewhat like normal people just have a 3D printer. They were talking about like eventually the technology will probably get to the point where you can actually print food in a way, like depending on obviously the material. Like
you just have to find the right material.
But I remember there was like a research project. I forget at what university, but they were trying to essentially create food, so then they could like solve global hunger, which is like a really interesting process or concept, I guess, to like actually go with it because it's not what you would think about when you're like, oh yeah, I have a printer at my house. What are you printing? Food? Like what? Like
I think it was like maybe like 3 months ago or something. I read like a small article basically about how Bill Gates, like, he was given a lot of flack for this because like he's like really big with like Microsoft for obvious reasons, but like he was trying to become a very big advocate and a very big investor into like trying to promote the research on synthetic meat. It's like save like the agricultural industry. Well, arguably save, because you're not really saving. You're kind of destroying agriculture because you're removing all those farmers' jobs and stuff. But he was trying to promote like synthetic beef for more like, I guess, reliable like sources of food rather than having to rely on like animal like what people argue animal cruelty by just farming them and everything, and like having their
basically put them in slaughterhouses.
Having their whole purpose just to be eaten. And so he was like he was advocating for that, but then a lot of people were giving him shit saying like, oh, like you're a tech person, like you have no right to be in here. But in reality, I think he was just trying to like invest in that rather than like trying to like go about it himself and start like a whole new career, because like he doesn't need a new career.
Exactly. So he's fine. He's fine.
Him and every one of his generations in the future are fine.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what's interesting about because I guess would that meat you think be considered vegan because it's not like made from an animal? Like synthetic beef and stuff.
Like it just honestly depends on where it comes from, because there's a lot of different types of like versions of being vegetarian, like vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian. There's all these different kinds. So as for vegan, it would be hard for me to say because I don't think I'm deeply educated enough, because if you just keep going down the rabbit hole far enough of like, let's say like it's being produced by machinery, well, like if that machinery requires like oil or something, those like could have came from like dinosaurs like super long ago or something like that, like then like you can argue like, oh, it's not vegan or some shit. It just depends on where you draw that line and obviously, what ultimately goes into it.
Obviously I don't think, you're not vegan. No. Obviously neither of us are vegan, so we don't know the whole I know vegans stuff about the society.
Vegetarians don't eat any form of meat that came from an animal. Vegans don't eat anything that is an animal or was produced by an animal. This can be applied to things such as like milk, because like it's not an actual cow, but it comes from a cow. Yeah,
that makes sense. So, and like cheese and stuff like that too, exactly. Like dairy products and all that, and I guess eggs and that stuff. Okay, that it will be interesting with because again that goes back to like it can be used for benefits if you like are able to mass produce and actually feed the world population, or it can be used for like, okay, we're gonna hoard this technology and not let anyone use it unless they come to us type thing. So it'll be interesting to see I guess the future. if I had a time machine, it would be interesting.
Like honestly, at this point anything could really happen. Technology's getting pretty crazy.
There's a meteor coming tomorrow. No.
Oh, okay, sick.
Nice.
Don't worry, we got a force field now.
That was sick, bro.
Recent technology.
Oh man. But we've been going for like an hour here, so we've touched on quite a bit of stuff, and this is also the main thing I wanted to really touch on is your 3D modeling, because obviously last time we saw each other, or not last time, but last time we really talked about, I guess, what was doing, it was like at West Valley like over a year ago when you were still like doing like psych
my whole track was to become a therapist.
But that's it'll be cool to see, and obviously you guys have now seen the actual images, and so hopefully we'll be able to see Noah's final product when he's like at an internship or a job somewhere, and we'll see him in a video game or something doing
just
that.
Add myself in as a little Easter egg.
Exactly, just a little Noah in the corner.
Someone gets like their head cut off or something, some kind of apocalyptic game will make
just Noah with like a smile, thumbs up, like. But yeah, that's thanks for coming, bro. I really appreciate it.
Having me.
This has been the second episode, guys. We'll see you later. Have a good one.